That is the essence of life, the celebration of it.
Hello friends, welcome to this program. Today we will examine the economic, social and psychological impact of migration on the family. Migration, the movement of people from the land of their origin to newer lands in search of better lives, has been on for ages. Be it the movement of Moses with his followers across the Red Sea, or that of the Pandavas to Indraprastha, migration has often been seen as a solution to all manner of crisis.
Even our popular culture seems to advocate the route of migration to help a person rise from rags to riches. Entire communities of nomads have migrated for trade for centuries all over the country. The Banjaras and Nuts of Rajasthan and the Paharis of hilly regions are but a few examples.
So, what exactly is migration? Migration can be defined as the relatively permanent movement of persons over a significant distance from one's place of residence, usually place of birth. Migration may take place from village to city, city to city, and even from one country to another. But this is not the only direction in which migration takes place.
Even after long years away from their places of origin, people do migrate back, be it from another country to one's own country, or from cities to smaller towns or villages within the country. However, many misconceptions still exist regarding the phenomenon of migration. The most widespread belief is that migration is a socio-economic malady and is basically connected with the lower strata of society. Also, that all migrants are men who migrate to further their job prospects.
Nothing could be further from the truth. Migration is a bipolar phenomenon. That is, it is concentrated mostly on either the upper end or the lower end of the socio-economic strata. However, of late, even the middle class seems to be migrating more frequently. Furthermore, not all migrants are men.
Migration leads to positive as well as negative impacts on the migrants and their families, as well as on society at large. Uprooted people often become alienated from society, and the families left behind undergo severe distress while trying to adjust to the absence of a family member. When entire families migrate, they have to struggle to get settled into the new community. Back in their hometown, they could bank upon the support of the native community. While here, even for simple things like opening a bank account or getting a ration card or voter's identity card, they have to run from pillar to post. There is also a difference in the reception a migrant receives according to his or her socio-economic status in the new community as compared to the old one. The migrant may have been a landowning farmer and a pillar of the community back home, but if he migrates for subsistence, he no longer receives the same regard in the new community.
A migrant who may have been a nobody in a big city abroad may come back home to find an extremely hospitable reception from curious neighbors. The difference of reception from the community can also occur according to age, race, sex, and cultural differences. The success of the migrants in the new community does not only depend on how skilled, resourceful, and affable they are, but also on how the new community perceives them and how willing they are to welcome them in their fold.
Certain social problems do arise as byproducts of migration, but we must remember that migration can also be an empowering process that may enable people to access opportunities that were not available to them in the land of their origin. There can be a number of reasons for migration. Broadly, they can be classified as economic and non-economic reasons. The major non-economic reasons for migration are marriage, education, and associative migration, whereby a family joins a migrant in his or her new area of residence. People may have to migrate due to war or natural calamities also. But most people migrate from areas of low opportunities to areas of high opportunity. Migration of people seeking jobs is the most prominent economic reason. Trafficking is a form of forced migration indulged in mainly for economic reasons. With globalization, there has been a rise in people's aspiration for self-advancement. The mass media has played its part in fueling this trend. As a result of this, migration for education and employment abroad has become prevalent among the urban middle and high classes. However, the rise in the number of people hoping to emigrate is far greater than the number of people who actually do. Interestingly, of late, Indian information technology professionals have been in great demand in the world, and they represent a large percentage of international migrants from India. However, skilled and unskilled workers from India have been migrating to the Middle East since decades.
Now that we have examined the history and process of migration and the reasons behind it, it is time to have a look at its impact on the migrant and his or her family. The impact of migration differs according to different social and economic status and also from region to region. Let us first examine the upper class.
This segment of society has both wealth and power. They are extremely mobile, and migration for education, marriage or business, especially to other countries, is a common phenomenon. Migrants are generally young and single, and because wealth is already in abundant supply, the family is not dependent on remittances from the migrant for survival. Instead of sending remittances, the well-off migrants tend to make lumpy investments for the family, such as in property or consumer durables. The family feels little or no impact economically. However, there are many noticeable social and psychological impacts.
Socially speaking, international migration is often a precursor of the division of a family. Migrating to a new country often makes a person create a nostalgic remembrance of their homeland as it was when they left it. This helps them survive. However, when the migrants return home, they find it difficult to deal with the changes that have occurred in the meantime. Many second-generation migrants prefer to stay on in their naturalized country rather than returning to their native place. They too want the best opportunities and lifestyle for themselves, which had once prompted their parents to move.
The family left behind experiences many far-reaching psychological impacts. Older parents may feel a sense of emptiness and deprivation. In some cases, latent marital discord between parents is seen to raise its head when the adult children outmigrate. These effects are less pronounced in joint families. However, in either family setup, mothers are known to cope better by forming new social support systems. Fathers, often retired and less social, are more prone than mothers to take to heavier dependence on the substance they abuse, such as cigarettes or alcohol, to deal with their depression.
The frequency of the migrants visiting their homes varies according to distance. Those who migrate to another country tend to visit less frequently than those who migrate within the country. Still, there are numerous instances of parents migrating to the country their child resides in. Of course, their ability to cope with the cultural shock depends upon how adaptable they were to begin with. Since most upper-class people tend to migrate to other countries, especially in the West, it is important to examine the impact this has on them and their families. An international migrant is often already in tune with the Western culture and traditions. However, there is still a slight culture shock waiting for him or her on arriving in the new country. There can be a lot of confusion in the person as his or her value system undergoes a turmoil. There is a period of adjustment during which
One may sink or swim. If a person fails to form a social circle, he or she may develop a severe homesickness, which can lead a person towards substance abuse. However, many people find themselves tempted by the freedom of the West. And, as the morals of the homeland do not apply here, this may fuel the desire to experiment with risky sexual behavior. This increases the risk of HIV or STD infection and endangers the person's current or future sexual partners and their offspring.
Now let us take a look at the impact on the middle class. From an economic point of view, a very small percentage of middle class families are dependent on remittances from the migrant sons or daughters. The majority of those who migrate do so for job opportunities, marriage or education. Most migrants, whether married or single, leave their families behind and send remittances. However, in some cases, when a person is transferred, the entire family moves with the person. Even though such a thing is rare, it has many social impacts.
First of all, the education of children suffers in these cases. They have to adjust to new circumstances and make new friends. Even the parents find the going tough, as there are no friends, neighbors or family members to help them during monetary or family crisis. The children in the urban setup often lose many of the cultural traditions as well as the ethos of the joint family. Their lack of familiarity with the native place further widens the distance between the two units of the same family. People working in transferable jobs have to suffer the most. In today's scenario, with skyrocketing prices, both husband and wife have to work to support the family. When a man gets transferred to another city, his wife and children stay back. They must either stay on alone or move in with close relatives. Changes in social relations and roles appear to accompany the temporary migration of males or females, especially in nuclear families. When the husbands are absent from the family, and the wife must live with her in-laws or other relatives, family conflict may arise. At the same time, the husband's absence can open up new opportunities and freedom for wives. Some become successful entrepreneurs, others get time to pursue a hobby. Running two households is an additional economic burden on the family. A man living alone misses his family and often saves up on vacations to be able to spend a more significant amount of time with his loved ones. In the course of this time, however, he may have to pick up a couple of skills he never acquired previously.
Now let us examine the findings of some of the studies conducted in Sri Lanka and Pakistan. When, as in case of Sri Lanka, mothers emigrate, leaving children in the care of fathers, the husband has to adopt a more nurturing role towards the children, previously the responsibility of the wife. But what about the psychological impact?
In Pakistan, the term Dubai syndrome has been coined to refer to a complex of symptoms experienced by the wives of migrant workers. The symptoms include delayed menstruation, pains with no physiological foundation, and periodic fits of crying. Some claims have been made that this kind of depression fuels substance abuse, divorce, and even suicide. However, these effects are generally the exceptions and not the norms.
Fathers are generally responsible for social control and punishment of children and adolescents within the family. Their absence often leads to problems of indiscipline and places greater strain on wives and other family members who must take over these social functions. In cases where the amount of remittances flowing in the family are huge, the children may become materialistic and demanding.
If gifts are used to compensate for time spent away from them, the children may resort to temper tantrums and get their own way. The parents are prone to depression. However, they may also experience a sense of pride in the achievement of the absent son or daughter. In the time a couple spends away from each other, both husband and wife may feel emotionally and sexually frustrated. This feeling can sometimes make them irritable. In more extreme cases, it may even lead them astray to seek forbidden pleasures of sex outside marriage. Men are more likely to visit commercial sex workers than women. However, each of these risky behaviors places one's partner at risk of contracting the deadly HIV virus or other STDs.
Now let us examine the impact of migration on the families of labor or agricultural migrants from the lower strata of society.
In the low-end segment, migration generally happens either as a group or as the continuation of a chain. However, many a time, migrants leave alone for a destination where a relation or a friend resides who can help them find work. Even though in salt pans and brick kiln units, workers are sometimes hired in pairs, the general trend is that the migrant leaves his or her family behind and sends remittances as and when possible. The family joins them only when the migrant has carved some sort of niche for himself or herself. Even though the remittances sent home are few and far between, they are important for the family left behind. These remittances may be utilized either to repair the house or to buy other items of consumption. However, most often they are used to pay off old debts. Unfortunately though, many a times all the money gets spent in doing so, and the household gets entangled in a vicious trap of indebtedness. As a result of migration, one notices that gender roles tend to expand. Women take on more direct responsibilities in agriculture and labor. They become more responsible for taking care of elders and get involved in decision-making for the household. However, in most cases, they still remain under the authority of a family patriarch. The absence of husbands often brings out their ingenuity, and some of them utilize the remittances to give soft loans to others in the community. Some find a voice in the local government and organize themselves for cooperative action.
Now let us examine the socio-psychological impact experienced by the family and others in the community in response to the remittances and the absence of the migrant. In cases where the inflow of remittances becomes better, it can lead to jealousy and tension within the community. In areas where most role models have migrated, there may be immense pressure on eligible youngsters to follow in their footsteps.
Frustration can creep in if this does not happen. Some claims have been made that this can fuel substance abuse and suicidal tendencies. As a result of migration, the family may begin to value education, but mostly the education of the male child is given greater attention.
Migration exposes young wives to the onslaught of aggressive men in the community, and these vulnerable women are often exploited in this manner. The significance of these scenarios lies in how they expose the partners as well as their future offspring to the risk of contracting HIV or STDs. Even though most migrants in this case generally visit home twice a year, the wives left behind miss their husbands. There is an entire body of Bidesiya and Birha folk songs from North Bihar which voice the feelings of the lonely wife.
However, loneliness is a situation that affects not only the families but the migrants themselves. Apart from this, there are many other psychological impacts on the migrants. Leaving behind the safety and security which one finds in a family setup, the migrant moves into a new alien community. The success or failure of the migrant depends largely on how readily he or she is accepted by the new community. The impact on his or her life is determined by the status of the migrant. It has been observed that those who migrate for subsistence find themselves in subsistence situations, while those who migrate from affluence generally move into affluence. The interplay of ambition in the migrant and the actual realization of those ambitions often determine the psychological impact. Labor migrants have to contend with a rough life. Although they do become accustomed to their situation and accept it, they still remain extremely vulnerable to exploitation. Due to their general lack of awareness about their rights, contractors and employers make them work long hours for very little pay. Women are generally paid less than the men.
In certain industries, such as sugarcane cutting and brick kiln units, the work carries on till late in the night. Even though it is illegal to call a woman worker for work at night, these laws are flouted with nonchalance. So much so that cases of sexual exploitation of female laborers are rampant, but for various reasons, action is rarely taken.
These people generally sleep in the open with no privacy and are exposed to the elements. The nature of their work generally exposes them to various health hazards, and thus diseases are common amongst them. The state of children is no better. The elder children are forced to take care of their younger siblings while both parents work. Education and nutrition are rarely provided for. The various instances of domestic violence seen among people of this strata are often an attempt by the man to reassert his manhood and control. In a world where his worth is rarely appreciated, the man creates a fantasy world where he is equated with his favorite screen idol. However, in the face of harsh realities, when the bubble is burst, the migrant may resort to alcoholism or other forms of substance abuse. And due to the family's lack of resources, this habit becomes the bone of contention between man and wife.
Depression and alienation can turn anyone into a risk taker. So can peer pressure. This is not dependent upon the strata of society one hails from. Let us examine how risk-taking due to either of these reasons can expose a person, his or her family, and even the society at large to STDs and HIVs.
It has been observed that in any strata of society, a person living alone is more likely to develop signs of depression and alienation, especially if he or she has no friends and the community at large remains aloof. This alienation can lower the threshold of boredom to alarming depths. The person may become more inclined towards sensation seeking. This adventurism can lead a person into substance abuse and even multiple partner sex, be it in casual relationships or with commercial sex workers.
A study conducted amongst the diamond industry workers of Gujarat revealed that while orthodox men shunned casual sex, the people who believed in jalsa or fun went about seeking it in groups. One of the primary reasons cited for such behavior was that since they lived away from their families with little or no social or moral constraints and earned hefty sums of money, they were more willing to indulge in risky sexual behavior.
However, the risk of their contracting HIV, AIDS or other STDs is only part of the problem. The bigger issue here is how these diseases can get passed on to innocent victims, such as the wives left back home, and from mothers to children.
The spread of the virus is a socio-economic reality. What makes it difficult to check is that women, being under male domination, have little or no control over their bodies and sexuality. Often men who cheat on their wives or indulge in risky sexual behavior or intravenous drug use do not tell their partners out of double standards, denial, or a desire to keep the marriage alive.
For the most part, it has been believed that people with jobs involving a lot of traveling and long separation from family, such as salespersons, truck drivers, etc., were primary carriers of virus. Commercial sex workers have also been held responsible for the rapid spread of the virus, even though the chances of infection from female to males are far less as compared to male to female transmission of the virus. Trafficking of girls from Nepal and Bangladesh to India is rampant. Trafficking within our borders also goes on at alarming rates. The trauma experienced by these girls, often even younger than 15, is untold. They are beaten, raped and tortured till they submit to the demands of the brothel owners. These traumatized girls lose their ability to trust. They undergo a severe identity crisis and often develop depressive or post-traumatic stress disorders. They feel unclean and impure. Blaming themselves, they lose their self-esteem and feel unworthy of being accepted by their families.
There is a need to address the issue of trafficking, not just to put an end to it, but also to help rebuild the lives of the women it destroys. Migration is a mixed blessing. On the one hand, there is a need to look at migration as a part of the cycle of development and economic growth. Each individual has the right to migrate and thereby avail the best possible opportunity to earn a living. However, on the other hand, we need to spread awareness about its ill effects and its impact on the family. We also need to address the issue of imbalanced growth, which leads to a need to migrate. Migration should be an informed choice. Let us strive to ensure that people are no longer forced due to calamities, war or trafficking to abandon their land and their people. Goodbye. Hello friends, welcome to this program. Today we will examine the economic, social and psychological impact of migration on the family. Migration, the movement of people from the land of their origin to newer lands in search of better lives, has been on for ages. Be it the movement of Moses with his followers across the Red Sea, or that of the Pandavas to Indraprastha, migration has often been seen as a solution to all manner of crisis.
Even our popular culture seems to advocate the route of migration to help a person rise from rags to riches. Entire communities of nomads have migrated for trade for centuries all over the country. Is the essence of life, the celebration of it. The Banjaras and Nuts of Rajasthan and the Paharis of hilly regions are but a few examples.
So, what exactly is migration? Migration can be defined as the relatively permanent movement of persons over a significant distance from one's place of residence, usually place of birth. Migration may take place from village to city, city to city, and even from one country to another. But this is not the only direction in which migration takes place.
Even after long years away from their places of origin, people do migrate back, be it from another country to one's own country, or from cities to smaller towns or villages within the country.